In today's video, I wanted to continue with and finish the story featured in BioShock 1. Last time I made it through Arcadia and into Fort Frolic. This is where I helped the psychopath Sander Cohen with his art piece. Then I made my way into Hephaestus. Here I worked on gaining entry to the Rapture control room and furthermore Andrew Ryan's office. This is where the big twist took place. I learned that Jack is Ryan's son and that he's actually a sleeper agent. He reacts to the phrase, "Would you kindly?" After Jack defeats Ryan, Atlas reveals himself to be Frank Fontaine, the criminal mastermind. He betrayed me and transferred control of Rapture over to himself. While the room was caving in, some little sisters came to my aid and delivered me to Dr. Tenenbaum. Together, we successfully got rid of Jack's mind control. This is where the story continues. Heading into the bathysphere, it's on to the third last level of BioShock.
Alright, you looking to slug it out? I'm game. But I got all the atom in the city, pal, and I ain't shy about using it. And now, I'm Jake to take her out for a spin.
What is this you wait for? Go and get this idiot!
This first section of Point Prometheus has the player chasing after Fontaine. He leaves traps and machines in his wake, which stand in Jack's way.
Last chance, kid! You pack it in now, and I'll leave this dump to you and Frau Kraut. You keep on coming, and Rapture's a fish tank.
Scheiße, you let him get away. Oh, I need a moment for thinking. Of course. This will be no problem. Find a Big Daddy and search his body. I would suggest you to be finding a dead one.
The main objective for Point Prometheus is to have the player turn into a Big Daddy, or at least have them look like one. Scattered throughout the area are the various components that Jack needs in order to assume the part. There's no arrow here to guide you though, so there's lots of exploration that needs to get done. All things considered, the level isn't as big as say Fort Frolic or the medical pavilion. There are tons of small nooks, crannies, and rooms that you'll need to poke your head into though. The first zone I headed towards was optimized eugenics. Battling through the splicers and meandering across each chamber, I managed to find the Big Daddy's voice box modification machine.
One down, 2 steps to go. Now, you need only to be finding the bodysuit and the pheromones from the other labs. What you wait for? Engraved invitation.
At this point in the game, Fontaine's messages and memos to Jack are really interesting. It's exactly how Andrew Ryan acted when he knew I was getting close to him. They reek of fear, anger, and insecurity. He's desperately trying to scare off the player and to get them to turn around. It's a battle that Frank is unsure if he'll win or not, so he's trying everything in his power to avoid it. With the new voice box, Jack now sounds like a Big Daddy. Anytime he gets hit, you'll hear the low growls and groans that these abominations usually make. The next gear piece was located in an unmarked library. At the back of the room, beyond some turrets, splicers, and security cameras, I found the Big Daddy boots.
You'll make terrible racket, but it's start. Now you will have need of bodysuit and helmet.
On top of the labored breathing, Jack now walks like one of them too. His footsteps echo throughout the area, leaving very little room for surprise attacks. However, it does bring me one step closer to reaching Fontaine. The next area was rather interesting. It was the Little Wonders educational facility, and the gear piece needed was quite unique.
We bred little ones to imprint to certain smells, the pheromones. But this is not like putting on aftershave. You will need 3 industrial applications of this stuff, and then the little ones will be drawn to you like a bee to honey. You will have to gather 3 pheromones here, so that you smell disgusting. Just like a Big Daddy.
Right off the bat, 2 samples of the pheromones were pretty easy to grab. They were conveniently placed on some tables and they were guarded by very few splicers. The third, however, was a little trickier to get my hands on. Delving to the lower level, I went through turrets, splicers of all kind, as well as another Big Daddy, although that last one was optional.
Look at you. We will make Big Daddy out of you yet, I think. But there's only one piece missing. The bodysuit. Go to fail-safe armored escort.
It's briefly explained by Tenenbaum and even a few ghostly flashbacks, but the Little Wonders facility is actually where all of the Little Sisters were engineered, conveniently not far off from the Big Daddy's site of creation. As you could probably imagine, most of the little girls were tricked, lied to, or taken against their will and brought here. This is where unspeakable atrocities occurred, and even though the facility is no longer operational, you can still see its horrific creations walking around Rapture. The last zone that Jack needs to head into is the failsafe armored escorts. This is where he can find the final components of the Big Daddy suit. It actually didn't take very much effort for me to stumble into the room with the head and body pieces.
Wunderbar. All you need now is helmet.
I'd turn tail if I were you, kid. Ain't nothing here for you but tears.
Yes. Now this is a Big Daddy. Are you ready? Now go to the Little Sister vent by the proving grounds.
With the suit fully functional, Jack gains a 25% resistance to all damages. Of course, the drawbacks are that the suit is loud, clunky, and my peripherals are cut off. But BioShock is all about give and take. Point Prometheus was certainly one of the shorter levels of the game. I think after a long crawl through Hephaestus, Apollo Heights, and even Arcadia, a little break is deserved, but considering I'm entering endgame territory, I don't think that's what's about to happen.
You need to bring them out of hiding and then they'll let you in the door. Go on, hit the vent with your wrench. Und bitte. It would mean very much to me if you will be gentle with the girls. Mein kleines Mädchen.
The second last level of BioShock are the Proving Grounds, and oh boy do I know why they got their name. The concept here is that the player has to use all of the tricks, plasmids, tonics, and weapons that they've gathered and put them to the test. Jack is essentially escorting a little sister through the level, as she's the only one that can open the doors. However, the catch of course is that she has a health bar. One of the fundamentals of BioShock is that everyone and their mother wants to get a hold of Adam. Even though I know that this little sister has been rescued and sapped of all her Adam, the Splicers don't know that. The Splicers are ruthless, violent, and worst of all, only target the little sister. I actually found this portion of the game to be pretty difficult. I've had a hard enough time looking after myself in Rapture, so to take care of another human being, that's something else entirely. Periodically too, the little sister will stop at a dead body and harvest it for its Adam, a genetically modified habit that they still can't seem to shake. I found these parts in particular the most difficult. The Splicers were tough and wouldn't go down without appropriate amounts of lead. I didn't have that much ammo, nor were my weapons that strong. Luckily, my health bar was still plentiful and untouched, but the same couldn't be said for the little sister. My first one ended up dying, and while I'm ashamed to admit it, so did my second as well as my third. However, I don't believe there are actually any repercussions. Tenenbaum chews out Jack, and you have to backtrack a bit to the nearest vent, but it apparently doesn't affect any of the future gameplay or outcomes of the game.
Don't know what I was thinking. Never spliced up once the whole time I was down here in this aquarium. Figured it was bad to mix business with pleasure, but... Forget all the nose candy and floor polish I've been wasting time with. This stuff is the mother's milk!
Fontaine speaks to Jack throughout this whole level, and it hints at events that are about to play out. The escort process for the Proving Grounds is pretty lengthy and burned through most of my supplies. However, at the end of it all, there is going to be some much needed relief. Honestly, I found the Incinerate 3 plasmid to be loads of help here. Not only does it do damage and distract the Splicers, there were quite a few oil spills around, and I don't know if this actually helped, but I was able to engulf the little sister in flames without any penalty, so maybe it provided a little extra protection. Throughout the level, a bouncer has been stalking Jack and has clearly taken offense to the player stealing its job. Fighting the other Big Daddy marks the end of this section, and it sort of serves as a mini-boss. Although it isn't anything new, doesn't target the little sister, and is in fact much easier to take out than those who came before it.
That might be plenty for the working scrubs and the pencil pushers, but I need more. More! I want a slice! There ain't nothing left to slice with!
Fontaine is nearby. You are reaching close now.
Video Gaming 101 says that anytime there's a room with ammo, supplies, health kits, and every single vending machine / upgrade possible, a massive boss fight is going to follow. Given where Jack currently is, Fontaine's dialogue, and this message from Tenenbaum,
There! You must use the needle of the little sister to drain Fontaine of his atoms. It is the only way to defeat him.
Here, take this.
Fontaine waits above. There will be no going back from here. Make sure you are ready to face him before moving on.
What comes next is BioShock's final fight. To be honest, I was a little nervous. I had plenty of Eve, but I was low on health kits and didn't have that much ammo to play around with. Even after making some purchases at the vending machines in the Gatherer's Garden, I had no clue what Frank Atlas Fontaine had in store for me. Of course though, there was only one way to find out, and it was time to close out the game.
I remember when me and the crowd put you in that sub. You were no more than 2. You were my ace in the hole, but you were also the closest thing I ever had to a son. And that's why this hurts. Betrayal, kid. Life ain't strictly business.
Arriving at Fontaine, the level was a little confusing at first. Strapped to an atom-pumping machine at the back was a giant, mutated version of Frank Fontaine. 4 icons popped up on my screen, each depicting a jar of Atom. Tenenbaum urges the player to take advantage of Frank's dormant state and to sap the first hit out of him. This commences the first phase of the Frank Fontaine boss fight, and honestly, it isn't that tricky, provided of course you have ammunition. Fontaine only uses fire plasmids for this one. His 2 moves are letting off a ranged, slow ball of fire, as well as shoulder bashing like a bouncer Big Daddy. Both maneuvers are easy enough to predict and dodge, so long as you keep your distance. As for his health, it's about the same as a Big Daddy's, or perhaps even less. Once his bar hits 0, it's time to sap the second hit of Atom from Frank. This is when phase 2 of the fight kicks off. Frank now utilizes ice plasmids. His moveset is largely the same, a shoulder bash and a projectile. Except this time, he brings on Rapture's security bots into the mix. Several machines come for Jack and fire off rounds at him. Although, after hacking into one, the other was slow and had a more difficult time targeting me. Fontaine's health went down pretty quickly, in fact faster than the first phase, and it was time to sap out the 3rd sample of Atom.
I'm gonna bury you.
This is when things got pretty crazy. Fontaine started to use shock plasmids, security bots were still flying around, and now splicers began to pour into the arena. It was most definitely overwhelming, and at times things got dire. I was low on health, out of first aid kits, and my ammo was burning up. Fortunately, after some brief exploration, I managed to find supplies lying around the lab. There were enough consumables to fully regenerate my bars, and some ammunition for the big guns. I found the grenade launcher to be a massive help for this part. Its damage radius was able to pick off the lone splicers and still have an impact on Fontaine. After my final shot, I ran over to the jacked up Frank and sapped out the last bit of his Atom.
I paid good money for you. This is what I get. I had you built. I sent you topside. I called you back, showed you what you was capable of. Even that life you thought you had, that was something I dreamed up and had tattooed inside your head. Now if you don't call that family, I know what is. And now,
They offered you everything, yes. And in return, you gave them what I have come to expect of you. Brutality. You took what you wanted. All the Adam, all the power. And the Rapture trembled. But in the end, even the Rapture was not enough for you. Your father was terrified the world would try to steal the secrets of his city. But not you, for now you have stolen the terrible secrets of the world.
With that, thus officially wraps up the story of BioShock. While that was the bad ending, I'll now play the good ending.
They offered you this city. And you refused it. And what did you do instead? What I've come to expect of you. You saved them. You gave them the one thing that was stolen from them. A chance. A chance to learn. To find love. To live. And in the end, what was your reward? You never said. But I think I know. A family.
There are a few endings to the game. Depending on how many little sisters you rescued or harvested, you'll get either the good or the bad outcome. If you both harvest and rescue the little sisters, kind of like how I did, it nets you the neutral outcome, which is honestly more aligned with the bad ending. Now, if you choose to rescue all of the little sisters, with the leeway of harvesting only one, you get the good outcome. Harvesting or rescuing all of them will either net you the totally good or totally bad outcome. Both share the same visuals as their neutral and good counterparts. The only difference really is that Tenenbaum's demeanor and voice changes. Depending on the outcome, she will either get really angry with Jack or very calm. With Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine dead, and the future of Rapture left up to interpretation, aka until BioShock 2 comes out, that puts an end to BioShock 1. Now, I'll talk a little bit about my experiences and thoughts with the game. First things first, the story. I thought the story of BioShock was fantastic. Like mentioned before, I unfortunately knew about the big twist in the middle, the would you kindly phrase, and Atlas being Fontaine. So that wasn't as big of a surprise as it should have been. However, the delivery and messaging behind it was still impeccable. Even though I knew about them, BioShock managed to present them in a way that was both intense and powerful. The raw emotion coming from both NPCs, as well as the state of Rapture in that moment, created the perfect storm. The other major plot points, like Andrew Ryan being Jack's dad, the little sisters rescuing Jack from the control room, etc., were all completely new and unknown to me. After that section, it was all uncharted territory and a fresh new experience. Story-wise, I wouldn't say that I really had any complaints. Everything felt sound, was paced nicely, and was easily communicated to the player. The one thing I maybe would have changed is the requirements for the good ending and the bad ending. Harvesting 2 or more and getting locked into the bad ending feels a little too tight, especially before the big twist. I found myself going through a bit of a character arc during the Olympus Heights portion. Having been saved by the little sisters and seeing them as normal little girls, I had a change of heart towards harvesting them. While I did my damage and cemented my legacy, I tried to atone for my actions and rescued every single little sister I encountered after the fact. While I don't think this should have netted me the good outcome, perhaps a more neutral one than kicking it topside with the splicers would have been more appropriate. I guess I would have enjoyed seeing a third ending, and I would have changed the requirements to 3 little sisters for cementing one's fate instead of 1 for either the good or the bad ending. Something else that I took note of was just how much the game throws at you in the very beginning. Tonics, plasmids, weapons, hacking, Eve. It was all a little overwhelming. Of course, towards the middle of the story, you pretty much have a grasp on the gameplay and its mechanics. but in the beginning, I let a lot of things fall to the wayside simply because there was too much to process all at once. That's more of a subjective experience and opinion, so I won't get too much further into it as others might feel differently. However, something that others might actually feel the same way about is the Frank Fontaine fight. To me, it was a little lackluster and didn't feel as impactful as it should have. I had more trouble fighting Steinman and the Big Daddies than I had with a juiced up Frank. I also think it didn't feel impactful because it only wrapped up Fontaine's story. You don't get to see Tenenbaum's ending, what happens with Rapture, what Jack goes through right after, etc. Frank's demise at the hands of the Little Sisters was golden, but there were other details that I would have liked to have seen. One thing I would like to praise BioShock for is its subtle storytelling. A plot point I had trouble understanding at first was Jack's compliance with everything. He goes from surviving a plane crash to witnessing a man get brutally murdered, he discovers an underwater city, and then immediately jumps into action. I was surprised to see that he didn't just take a moment, absorb everything, and go over his options. Instead, Atlas asks him to save his family, and Jack simply does it. While I couldn't fathom it before, the would you kindly plot point shines brightly here and gets a standing ovation from me. The lack of questions and curiosity on Jack's part all stems from his mind control. Of course, he's not going to question anything. As Andrew Ryan once said, a man chooses, a slave obeys. That plot point deserves 2 thumbs up. Next, let's talk about the world itself. Rapture was incredible and honestly carried the game. When Jack comes across it, it's war-torn, destroyed, rusted, and filled with death, decay, and chaos. There are dangers and atrocities lurking at every corner. The world down here is different. You have mutant junkies looking for hits of Adam. Big abominations are escorting these demonic, zombified little girls who have the largest quantities of Adam. There are plasmids which essentially act as superpowers. And above all else, there's no law or law enforcement. Anarchy reigns supreme down here. The law is survival of the fittest. Andrew Ryan, Tenenbaum, Atlas, everyone tries to convince you how wonderful Rapture was before the Civil War. In reality, through flashbacks and the audio tapes, you learn that it was just as ugly and corrupt. Its lawlessness and destruction were bound to happen. It's like painting over a scratch. It doesn't fix the problem, it only conceals it. On the subject of Rapture, the idea of an underwater hidden dystopian city was really interesting. It's neat to see how that plays into Rapture's identity and how its residents perceive it, like Atlas and Andrew Ryan. It also makes the player wonder, how did it get all of its residents? Where do its supplies and power come from? And how does it stay off of the surface world's radar? Again, a lot of this information gets pieced together through the audio tapes, which I would definitely be interested in going over them for a separate video. One thing I wish there were more of in this game were psychos. People like Dr. Steinman and Sander Cohen. To me, they made their levels riveting, thrilling, unnerving, and exciting. I really enjoyed the Medical Pavilion and Fort Frolic, simply because the men made it more enjoyable. I found myself less invested in places like Arcadia and Neptune's Bounty, because those felt like bridges to the sections that were more entertaining. BioShock could have utilized NPCs like Rose the Splicer and even Julie Langford in other ways that would have captured my attention more meaningful interactions and boss fights. I liked Langford's ending, but I didn't get to share enough time with her in order to be impacted by it. Rose was creepy and her screen time was captivating, but we don't see her ever again after the security bot chases her down. Maybe I'm an outlier with this opinion, but the psychos were what made Rapture feel darker, yet more alive. I think that's why I feel more strongly about the first half of the game. It explores themes steeped in horror and chaos, while still fleshing out the story. The second half of the game was great, but it shied away from those elements and crept towards more of an existential tone. A man who's trying to figure out who he is while simultaneously saving Rapture. Overall, I really enjoyed my time playing through BioShock 1. This game was incredible, and while I have some criticisms, most of my thoughts and opinions are positive and encouraging. I'm excited to get into its successors one day and see how they compare to this masterpiece. I'd love to know your thoughts on the story of BioShock down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.